Hi, welcome to a special edition of Education Matters. Those of us who are involved in education, whether we're a school board member, school administrator, or even a teacher, know that what happens in the halls of Trenton does affect what happens in our classroom. I recently had the opportunity to speak with Senator Thomas Kean Jr., who's the leader of the minority party in the New Jersey Senate, and we talked about some of those issues that are important to us, such as PARCC, such as school aid, such as the state budget, such as superintendent salary caps. I think this dialogue that I had with him will help inform you as to what his party is thinking and what he is thinking as we move forward with these issues through the end of this school year and beyond. I would like to point out that the views expressed by Senator Kean are his and his alone. They are not mine nor the association's. We may agree and sometimes disagree on some issues, but this gives you an opportunity to hear what the leadership is thinking in the halls of Trenton. So I hope you enjoy it. We're here with Senate Minority Leader, Senator Thomas Kean Jr. Welcome, Senator.
It's great to be with you, Ray. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us and talking to our membership. First of all, we're going to get into some of the education issues, but I know you deal a little bit with your local boards of education. How do you see the role of the board member?
We've got extraordinary public schools, not only in this district, but throughout the state of New Jersey. And the vast majority of them are doing just an extraordinary job. And the role of the school board member is to build on that excellence and that success. So they need to understand to make sure that the students are getting the type of opportunities that they need. That there's a quality teacher in every classroom. That things like bullying and other demeaning activities are not happening within the school boards. Making sure that the budgets make some sense within the context of the school board proposal. Those are all important leadership roles for school board members.
All right. As we're taping this, it's the middle of the budget season. The budget, I think every year is tight. How do you think it's going to evolve this year? You have a lot of obligations that are hard to meet.
We do. I think this is a good budget. I think a lot of people will see this budget as a very, very positive one that the government's imposed. It's the largest number of state aid to education in the history of state education aid, $13.5 billion or so. Has the largest pension payment at $1.3 billion of any time in our history, and the larger than the last 5 governors combined, I think, in 1 year. So it's an important prospect, not only for current educational needs, but also for making sure that we have the pension payments are reasonable and being made in the right way over time. Likewise, we've also shown that we shouldn't be increasing taxes in this time. I mean, right now this is a budget that says that we can do all these priorities, meet the expectations of the electorate and citizens across the state of New Jersey without increasing their taxes or fees at a time when people are realizing it's difficult for a lot of people economically.
Well, you mentioned tax increases. I know those across the aisle would like to propose a millionaires tax to help meet some of those obligations. They feel we're still falling behind in our pension payments and we can increase school aid and all that. Where do you see the millionaires tax?
We've seen proposals for increasing taxes over the course of the last decade, and we've seen the negative impact that they can have on people. When it was done before, $70 billion of wealth left the state of New Jersey. It wasn't destroyed, simply moved south into other states before the downturn occurred. You had $1.3 billion in charitable ability left the state of New Jersey. And that has a real impact, not only over the course of the last decade, but on families when people are making the decision about where they want to retire, where they want to start their next job. That has a crippling impact as people are seeing the potential for additional tax increases. They're saying maybe it's going to be, we won't do, our company won't be located in New Jersey. Maybe our family won't be raised in New Jersey. Maybe we won't retire in the state of New Jersey. So not only do you have that crippling effect on families and small businesses and entrepreneurs and charities alike, but you also realize that we won't have the programs. If those individuals leave the state of New Jersey, and you can follow that through IRS tax data, if all that income leaves the state of New Jersey, we won't be able to fund the important programs that are education related, health related, and all the myriad of important priorities for all New Jerseyans if people simply making the decision to leave the state rather than stay here and grow their families and their companies here in New Jersey.
So from your perspective, it would be almost a negative impact. It may be a short-term gain, but it's not a long-term.
It's been a negative impact in the past when it was proposed, and I think it will be a negative impact going forward. In addition to which, it actually won't accomplish the end. It's a $600 million total at the very best estimates, with no consequences of people leaving. So it's a one-year issue where people have proposed it for about $4 billion worth of solutions. So it's a very modest short-term solution that I think it will actually, in increasing taxes in general, would hurt the people of the state of New Jersey in a way that will cripple us for generations to come.
You know, one of the big obligations for the state budget, I know we have increased state aid for education, but one of the big obligations, and the one that we're grappling with, is the pension.
Right.
The governor appointed the commission. They made some recommendations. First of all, do you feel this is a crisis that it's getting harder to ignore?
It is a crisis. If we don't address this within the coming year, I anticipate that you will not be able to address it in a rational way 4 years from now. What we need to focus on now, and I hope that people of goodwill will come together and continue to negotiate. This commission, the administration, the NJSBA, legislators, Republicans, Democrats, school board officials, all have a role in finding a solution for the pension crisis to make sure, A, that the people who have earned a pension can still get the pension when they retire. People who have the health benefits needs can continue to have a positive health benefits experience, but also in all of that context, that it's affordable now and over time. And this governor has, with our support, made the largest pension payments in history. So we need to continue funding the pension. But we also need to make sure that the reforms that were started in 2010 that allow to make sure that people can retire with the promises that were made to them can continue, but I think we need to address this in the short term.
So that the roadmap, as it's described, is at least pointing us in the right direction from your perspective. You know, you're not going to give it carte blanche, but you need to do something.
I think people are recognizing on a bipartisan basis, whether it's Tom Byrne, who is the vice chair of that effort, to Republicans and Democrats like on that commission, but also people of goodwill, I think, around the state, realize there's got to be a positive endpoint. And if you can do it in a collaborative basis where you can find the solution where you may not agree with all of the points, but you can figure out ways to get to 80% of the approach. But if people can come together as opposed to being pulled apart, I think that's a positive outcome, not only for the solution, but can also build for the other important issues that we need to address in Trenton and the school boards address every day within their sphere of influence.
I know local board members are a little concerned that as part of that proposal that future pension payments will be absorbed by the local school district. Right. It should be a revenue neutral according to the commission with the savings on the health benefit side of it. Right. Is that something that you're looking at?
But that's something that we're all looking at, and we should all be looking at, because you want to make sure that over time that it is cost neutral, and there are very people with great experience who are on that commission, but there are also people in every walk of life in New Jersey that have the type of experience and the type of ability to add their input to this process, which is why between now and when we find the solution, it's very important for people to contact the legislators, for people to reach into the administration, for people to work with all parties to find a positive solution to this issue, because I think over time, A, the solution needs to be found, and B, it needs to be affordable for everybody who's involved in finding the solution.
Let's move on to some other education issues away from the budget issues. One of the issues I know is kind of important to you is the Opportunity Scholarship Act. Usually it's proposed in the budget, and your colleagues across the aisle will not support it.
This is the second time it's been proposed in the budget. I've been working on this for the last decade and more.
Right.
And I mean, as we discussed at the beginning of this conversation, people need to graduate from our high schools, college or career ready. I mean, that's one of the promises of equality of opportunity that we have. Make sure that they can get the type of job they want to achieve coming out of high school, or get the type of higher education opportunity that they want to achieve, and that they're prepared for that opportunity. And in the vast majority of school buildings in the state of New Jersey, that's accomplished for the vast majority of the students. But in certain school districts, in certain school buildings specifically, that's not being accomplished. And you start to, if you lose that type of opportunity for those individuals to achieve their better tomorrows, that hurts all of us as a society. So the Opportunity Scholarship Act simply says, for those schools where 60% of students are failing one of either the math assessment or the other assessment, or 40% are failing both, in an immediate basis, those students should have an opportunity to look at other wonderful public schools, other parochial schools, other private schools, so that you can have that type of solution in the immediate term for that family. And so it's simply an approach that says, let's make sure that everybody graduates from high school, college, or career ready. We owe that to every single student in the state of New Jersey so that they have that type of opportunity to achieve.
One of the other issues to our membership and to a lot of other school districts is the leadership and the superintendent salary caps.
Right.
That was implemented a few years ago. How do you see that progressing as we move forward?
That was an issue that people were talking about 6, 7 years ago, as people were starting to realize that over the last decade, property taxes increased 70%. And that cost was, a lot of different districts. The cost of education is anywhere between 40 and 60% of the overall property tax bill. And so people were looking at this saying, what component does every structure of leadership have in that cost? So years ago, people looked at that and said, let's make sure that these salaries are in line with what they should be, that the expenses are not out of whack. You don't have car adjustments on top of a couple of different things. And so people were looking at that. So we've got to look at, I think, aggressively at every level and make sure there's efficiency going forward. And if we're making sure there's efficiency, then maybe we can revisit the cap in a way that say, in the context of a 2% cap, in the context of the competition within for hiring, and in the context of making sure that there's efficiency at every level of education and cost and benefit,
Mm-hmm.
that we can look at that context going forward as long as the other variables are addressed.
Maybe the biggest education issue that I know the legislatures and everyone in education is dealing with is PARCC,
Yeah.
the test. And I think the Senate has taken a little bit more wait and see on both sides of the aisle to wait until after the results are in and to analyze it. Is that, you think, the right way to move about on that?
My daughter took PARCC.
Oh, she did.
And I understand. I mean, we have to look at this, and we should always understand that you have to measure what our students are learning, measure how they're competing against their peers in other states, measure how they're measuring against students in other countries, and make sure that they've got the skill sets that are necessary that lines up not only with the SAT, but with the type of program experiences and academics that they will experience at their next level of learning. So I think it's important that we look at PARCC, that people are evaluated over time, not only performances, but the students are being tested on what they're learning. And what we need to identify, I think, as a legislature, but also through the school board members, is what's working the right way, what are we measuring, and the governor's already appointed a commission to say, are we over-testing in certain ways? And that's an analysis that will come back at some point. But let's not rush to judgment. Let's focus on a solution that includes PARCC or some equivalent as part of that testing process. Because I think that's good for the student, it's good for the teacher, it's good for the parent, and it's good for kids in every single zip code in the state of New Jersey to have a balanced approach across zip codes.
So you do believe we need to have some type of assessment to judge?
Of course, there's assessment in every single career, in every single way. We have to make that people are in either, whether it's at college level or whether it's in the professional world. And I think it's important to have an assessment going forward. Now we need to understand whether the structure that this accomplished in the first year is the right way to do it, but overall, I mean, assessment is an important part of any professional capacity.
Just one final question. You mentioned the respect you have for the role of board members. Any advice you give them on communicating with their legislators on these issues?
Yes. Call us. Email us. They are the ones on the front line. They know in real time what's working and what's not working in the schools. Are the proposals that we're putting forth, do they make sense? Are they unworkable? Are they unaffordable? But reaching into their individual legislator is a very important part of the process, whether by phone call, by meeting, by email, because they are the subject matter experts. And they also understand, I think, more than almost anybody else, that the future education is not about just simply dollars and cents. It's about focusing on what the outcomes are. And these school board members are continuing a very important and proud tradition of excellence in our public education system, and they should be rewarded and thanked for that now and going forward, and making their communities a better place to live and to work and to raise their families.
Senator Kean, I'd like to thank you for
Thank you,
taking
Ray.
this time to talk to myself, but more importantly, our members.
Chris, thank you.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of this Special Education Matters.